Hello and welcome. Thank you for tuning in to our guest speaker series today. My name is Amanda Hawley with Generation Schools Network. And today we have Miss Sandy Engle from the city of Fort Morgan here to speak to us. Just as a heads up, this is being recorded. We hope some of you are able to tune in after the fact if you weren't able to attend live. Sandy, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Amanda, for having me. I was excited and really looking forward today to share a little bit of my background and my career with several of the students. It might be an area that I hope you might consider as you pursue your own career and future. It's been an exciting ride for me. It was one that I didn't set out to actually go into. Rather, it organically presented itself along in my career. And so I will be excited and share a little bit more about my background and how I arrived at this particular career choice, which is economic development. So to begin with, I do have just a very quick video that I thought would be fun to share with all of you to give you an idea of what is an economic developer. I will start sharing. Okay, so quick, fast 60-second overview of what is economic development and what can someone who embarks in that type of career do or work for. And so hopefully that gives you just a very quick snapshot of that, of my career. It's amazing to be able to summarize it in 60 seconds. But hopefully what you've seen is there's a variety of places that an individual can work at or for. So you're not just limited to just one industry or one segment or sector. So that's kind of neat. It's a very, how do I say it, national type of program in which you can, sorry, ended up, yeah, it's one of those days. I was talking to Amanda, busy day.
We get it. You're busy. We understand.
Okay,
No worries.
you're at the office or whatever. I have another kind of sheet or item that I would like to go ahead and also share with you that will hopefully also help kind of summarize economic development. And so oftentimes I understand that why, what do I love about this career? And so I think one of the important things about this particular career for me is that you're a catalyst for change. You can actually improve and positively impact your community or the lives of people that actually live in your community. You play an integral part in the direction. If you are looking for a type of leadership opportunity that allows you to interact with a lot of different people, a lot of different initiatives, definitely economic development provides that. So that's a very, I think, exciting thing about what I enjoy. It's the field is always evolving as well. As you saw from the video, there are just so many places to work. When I first entered the field of economic development back in the early 90s, it was a pretty young, I want to call it a young industry. There was an association and they were giving some type of training and certification. It was mainly concentrated just on individuals who worked for either a government, a very large utility, or a chamber of commerce. And I think the video shows how much it has in the last 30 years, how much it's evolved and the different career paths that you can take. It's anything from working for, those legislation, at the federal level sometimes, to real estate agents, to, again, sticking with some of the commercial stuff. So great ability, challenges, different areas that you can get involved in. And then really I kind of, when I touch upon a little bit about my background, it primarily is a career. Economic development, I feel, is primarily a career of marketing. And so marketing encompasses more than just maybe marketing a particular product. Oftentimes businesses hire a marketer to promote their product or service, whatever it might be, whether it's a widget, whether it's a hospital or healthcare service. Marketing is extremely broad and a very important piece in the whole business arena. But I think economic development encompasses a lot of those factors on a much huger, broader scale, because in a way you're marketing a community or a city. If that's your employer, I have to be, I might be marketing the utilities and some of the hardcore infrastructure. I might be marketing land and real estate that the city owns. I might be marketing a way of living or trying to convince individuals to actually live here and be a part of the labor force as well. So you end up marketing a lot of different aspects of the city. And so I really like just the field of marketing. It's very intriguing to me. I get to be in on the research side. I love information and I love discovering new things about people and places. And so that research element is, I love it, I guess. And so you're able to do that, or you should very much do that. If you're in the field of marketing, it's an important piece of researching. And writing. I write almost every single day. And I enjoy writing, especially when I have the time to write. I write everything from on a small scale, like what we call ad copy. So in fact, I was working on an ad for the city of Fort Morgan to run in the local newspaper right before we hopped on to this Zoom presentation, and trying to figure out how to say something in a very short amount of space. Then there are days when I will spend hours on a grant application writing pages and pages of information and supporting and making a case for why the city of Fort Morgan should receive some funding, for example. So just a wide variety of writing. And then most recently, it's really involved a lot into being able to use some of my graphic design skills. I think that that's an important piece for a marketer, not only the hands-on stuff of learning how to be able to put together a pleasing advertisement or a flyer or a social media post. All of those, I feel I have greatly benefited from doing it hands-on, and I immensely enjoy that aspect of it. But even if you hire some of those tasks out and work with a consultant or someone, outside of your organization to do that, I feel it's important for you to understand when you're paying someone and looking at something to say, is that pleasing? Is that a good place? Where's the, if I'm spending a lot of money, where's the best place to get the word out to reach the greatest amount of people for my money? Those types of items, and understand what you're looking at and the message that you are basically paying for. So I still think, knowing how all of that operates is important. And so, to summarize, like I said, I put those 3 main points up at the top of my screen of why I enjoy so much about economic development. And so kind of, to, a little bit of background. So I had mentioned earlier about this. I didn't know anything about economic development when I was in high school. I mean, that wasn't like a career choice, we never took any special career placement tests for an economic developer, whatsoever. So actually, when I was in high school, I thought I wanted to go into the medical field, and I was going to be a doctor. That was what I originally intended. And so in high school, I took all of things like science, all of the biology and math classes at the time, because that's what I thought I was going to embark on. I didn't take any business classes in high school because, again, my thought was I was going to be a doctor, so it was more important to concentrate. I still feel that those are very important classes to take those. And take some of those harder skills like the math and the science and the writing classes. I mean, I did take 4 years of English in high school. I took 4 years of science. I took 4 years of math. So I felt that by doing that, when I went to school, my first 2 years of school, it was almost for me a repeat of high school. I had gotten some great skills down and felt very comfortable going to a new environment and, picking up new things and being able then to, I guess, feel that I had the capacity to learn some other new stuff because I had a good solid foundation in high school. So that was kind of how I started. And then when I went to school, like I said, I started as in pre-med, or a biology major, actually. And then I decided that I didn't like chemistry that well. I thought it was boring. I was didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had a a teacher that at the college at the time that I was taking, which was at NJC actually in Sterling. And I knew I was transferring. And he said, I think what you would really enjoy, Sandy, is you should go into the journalism school when you transferred to UNC in Greeley. And so I completely flipped majors and ended up getting an undergraduate degree in journalism and mass communication. So I got to write a lot about biology sorts of things. So I still was able to do that. And I had a good understanding and a good, I think, wide perspective on a lot of different issues and different subject areas. So it still helped me, some of those math and science classes, even though now I was really leaning on my English classes that I had picked up. Then I decided to stay in school and get a Master's of Arts degree in communications. And so that was kind of my career path in the beginning. And I was still probably flying somewhat loosely, not quite sure what I wanted to do. And I saw an ad in the newspaper at the time. Newspaper was a huge medium. I realize now a lot of things are done digitally, but back in the early 90s, we didn't have social media. And the internet wasn't even quite an item of usage by the common person, or the student. And so it was a little bit more, it was a little bit different on how we got our information, I should say. And so a newspaper was a huge area. And again, being a journalist, I read a lot of newspapers. That's what you do. You're always trying to learn what's going on, what's important in your field, and stay on top of things and what's in the newspaper. And so, saw an ad in the newspaper at the time, and it was for a job that was called City Progress Director at the city of Fort Morgan. And I just read the job description and I thought, hey, that sounds kind of fun and interesting. And so I interviewed for the job, came out from Greeley, interviewed for the job, was offered it, and started embarking in this career of economic development, which I really didn't necessarily have, set out to be an economic developer. I did pick up some classes. The other thing that you will learn, I think, to do well in your career is that learning never stops. You need to be a lifelong learner. And just because I had 6 years of school, I haven't ever stopped, because time and what is required for my job, and there's discoveries and different information that comes up. And so I think you need to stay relevant in your job and learn what's on the cutting edge and how people, in my case, are getting information, and how, like I said, when I started out, your newspaper and radio were your primary sources of getting news. And now we have a whole different way of receiving information. And so in order for me to function today, as opposed to back in the 90s, I had to learn a lot of new skills, and I went back to school. Not only did I get some certification and take different classes and workshops in economic development, but I actually started in on another degree, an associate's degree in multimedia and graphic design. And so that's how I got comfortable, and I'm able to, put together hopefully video presentations and flyers and PowerPoint presentations, and use all of those items that, trust me, back in the early 90s was not available to me. And so it's important to be a lifelong learner. I feel. My career path, after about 9 years of doing economic development at the city, I ended up doing a short stint as the Small Business Development Center, involved with that a lot more than what I was used to. And so when I was offered the opportunity to be a marketing director of a healthcare facility in Fort Morgan, I went, you know what? That's calling me. And so I ended up applying for the job and getting that, and spent 19 years actually as a healthcare marketer, and loved every aspect of it. Remember that biology and that love for medicine when I was in high school? I was able finally, it's interesting that full circle. I was able to even put that and be more involved in that line, even in my career of marketing. So again, some of those, what we call basic classes, I feel it might not be relevant or evident to you immediately, but there might be a day where they become very important, that you have that knowledge and that baseline stuff. So it certainly did to me. I left after my stint in marketing. I spent, again, a short time as a Chamber of Commerce director. So again, I started moving back towards that economic development field, one that I missed. I missed being able to contribute to my community. Remember that being that catalyst for change and being able to positively contribute to the community. I felt that was something, again, using all of those marketing skills that I had picked up, I was able to go back and enter into that economic development field. And then I was just really fortunate. I was approached by a few people when I was at the chamber and said, hey, remember, you would do excellent. Why don't you come back to the city of Fort Morgan and do your job, that brought you here when you came out of college. And so that's how I ended back again at the city of Fort Morgan. So kind of a full circle. About 2 years ago. So this month will be 2 years that I have been back in my role as the economic development specialist for the city of Fort Morgan. So that's kind of a little bit about my education, work experience, and what brought me here. Again, some of the skills, we talk a lot about the education and the work experience, but I also feel that there's certain skills that if this is something that interests you, these are skills that have helped me, I feel, not only in economic development, but even when I was in marketing at Colorado Plains Medical Center at the healthcare facility that I was at. Again, key is communication skills for different audiences. And you're working with a variety of people of different ages and backgrounds and interest, whether it's at the hospital or whether it's in the community. You got to be able to feel comfortable visiting with teenagers, with people that are middle-aged, and even working a lot with senior citizens. And so it's a wide variety of audiences, and what appeals to them and where they find their information differs at all with all of the groups. And so again, it's important to know how they're learning about your services or your business, or in my case, the municipality that I work at. It's important to recognize that. And it's not just digitally that you communicate. I appreciate digital. I do. My digital means of choice is email. I really appreciate email, texts. Granted, not as fast. I'm a very fast typer, so trust me, when I have a keyboard, it's easier for me to type. Thus, probably why I like email when I'm at my desktop the most. But keep in mind, some people don't communicate that way. And so you've got to also be comfortable being able to pick up the telephone and visit with individuals. So not just the written word. So again, I think your communication skills are key. Also, organization. Being able to manage your time, your projects, all within budget constraints. Because no matter where I've worked, there's always someone that says, we want this end result, and how are you going to achieve that end result with a limited amount of money? Because, how do I say it? Money doesn't grow on trees, right? It doesn't just happen. And even when you work for a public agency, you have what is considered being very fiscally responsible for other people's money. These are all of your citizens that live and work in Fort Morgan are contributing to the betterment of it. And so you have to be mindful that you can't be wasteful or just throw money away. You definitely have to be a good steward of it. And so you're going to have to be able to think, what's the best way of achieving that end goal on limited funds? As you've seen also on the video, there's a lot of things that I do. Every day is different. And there's obviously a lot of projects all going on at the same time. It's almost like managing, I would say, final papers. Everybody probably can relate to that, in 8 different subject areas that you're always on, always having to, be mindful of meetings and deadlines and juggling various projects all at once. You can't just put off a bunch of other projects to concentrate on one. You've got to make sure that you tackle all of them and are able to schedule those. And so organization becomes important. Being proactive and taking initiative becomes very important in that case, because you know what's coming down the pike, you know when things are due. And so you need to be able to work independently and say, hey, I know I have this major grant due in a week, and I also have these meetings coming up. So what can I do now that will maybe put me in a better position so I have more time to concentrate toward the end when that grant project is due? Let me see. Again, strategic thinking and planning and looking at the whole big picture. That's important, I feel. Flexibility, huge if you're in this job. You've got to be able to sometimes respond to very unpredictable things that will confront you, and have patience in them, especially in the field of economic development. It's really interesting because if I'm working on recruiting a business to come to the community, that's a very big move in terms of labor force for them, the amount of money that they would spend, giving up where they're at and moving their business to the community. It's something that's not taken lightly, right? And so it's what people would consider a very major purchase in their life. And so all of that takes coordination and time, once they've made that decision. And so you might be working and trying to convince a business to come here. And that's going to take maybe months and multiple contacts with them. And then when he finally signs the dotted line and says, yes, I'm going to purchase some land here and build the business, that doesn't happen overnight either. And so you got to be very patient and realize that rewards, you set the groundwork oftentimes, but you might not be rewarded for all what you do until 2, 3, 4 years down the road. So you got to be able to take that delayed kind of reward satisfaction in the field of economic development in particular, and I'm sure there's others as well. Leadership skills are very important. And so an economic developer is only as good as the team that she or he works with, is what I have found. And so going back to being able to communicate to different audiences, and you've got to be able to inspire and motivate others, right? Economic development does not happen in a silo. And so you've got to build relationships and participate and learn how to influence and work with others. And so leadership skills become very important. That teamwork and collaboration becomes very important. Being seen as someone that is an agent of support is very important, and learning that. Sales, obviously, you've got to be persuasive and confident if you're going to try to convince some business to make a move to the community, or if you're in a broader or in a different area, I guess, not necessarily economic development, but in the field of marketing. Again, you've got to believe in your product, you got to know your product or service, and you got to feel comfortable talking to people and selling them on it. So presentation skills become important. And then finally, this one's really hard to necessarily teach. It's something sometimes that are gained. It's kind of an intuition. It's called emotional intelligence in the business field. Know who and when to pick your battles is what I call political correctiveness. And again, it's something that is really hard to be able to explain to individuals, but understand you have to keep your eye, I guess, on what's important, what maybe your biggest goals or your biggest bang for your buck. Know who to contact and when is a good time to communicate with them to get your message across. Some of those things that it's not in a textbook, but I think to succeed in this field is important to know. So big question always, how much does an economic developer make? That always comes up, right? And so I wish I could say that it's a career field that you're going to make $1 million every year. I wish. And you don't have to work very hard at all. And so I will be extremely honest with you. It's a career, no matter if you're working for a municipality or for a chamber of commerce. You will probably work more than 40 hours a week. I think since I came out of college, I've never had a week where I've put in less than 40 hours. I mean, unless it's a vacation or one where there's a holiday or something like that. but a typical work week for me is usually closer to 50 hours at least every week. There's a lot of items. Remember all of those items that I told you about of communicating to different audiences at certain times. There's different meetings, there's different networking opportunities, there's different projects, and they happen outside of 8 to 5 for me. And so oftentimes I work evenings, I work weekends, I go to early morning meetings. Sometimes my lunch hour, especially in recent years, has been almost non-existent. So I do put in more time than that, and most do. And I unfortunately that's comes with this industry. I would say your salary will also depend upon the size of the community or agency that you work for. A smaller community economic developer is paid less than a large metropolitan community economic developer. Years of experience will also play into the salary. We at the city of Fort Morgan recently went through a salary survey where we hired an outside firm. And so they studied all of the jobs available at the city of Fort Morgan and compared us to, I would say, like as much as you can, comparable municipalities especially in our particular area. So I'm not competing necessarily for salary with someone in New York City. They didn't compare like my position to a similar one in New York City. It was a very regional emphasis and size of community or agency that they compared. And so they came up, there's a typical salary range, and it can range anywhere from $50,000 a year all the way up to $150,000. So I know that's a broad range, but there's so many factors that affect it. And so the average median, again, for someone, probably in our area, big region, and I'm putting a big region, not just maybe Morgan County. I mean, I'm opening it up to, like a Nebraska, Wyoming, Colorado Central kind of region. Average, I think they came up with $76,000. And that's typically our association, our Economic Development Association did a similar thing. And that's typically what they also kind of in that range came up with. So that's a typical, I guess, range for an economic development job at a size. Like I said, now if you work for the city of New York, that might be something, again, very different. So I don't know, Amanda, I am going to, I guess, turn it back to you and see if I covered what you think most of the audience might want to know about the position.
Sandy, you covered a vast array of all types of topics, everything that we wanted to hear, and you gave great advice to the students. I know they will walk away learning so much, as did I. So we just thank you for sharing your journey into your career with us, and we appreciate you oh so very much. Students, if you have questions, you maybe just want additional information, you can always reach out to Sandy at sandy.engle@cityoffortmorgan.com. So you've got her email. She is very great on email, as she said. She always gets back to us in a timely manner. So I know she'll do the same for you guys, and she'll be happy to answer any questions that might come up.
Absolutely. Sandy? Absolutely. Yes. And if any of your students ever feel that they would like to have a one-on-one and come and visit with me one-on-one further, I am more than happy to meet with them as well.
Thank you. That's super exciting to hear. That's awesome. What a great opportunity. So take advantage of that.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next month.